to Introduction to Marketing. This is lesson 6, and in this lesson we start focusing on the marketing triangle, and specifically we look at the market, or the who. Now, in the previous lesson, when we were briefly previewing the marketing triangle, we put this picture forward that you could look at, where you could see the three sides to it: the message, the what, the market, the who, and the media, the how. And we explained it as a marketing triangle. But in truth, Dan Kennedy could just have described it as a three-legged stool, and in fact he has in the past. Now, just for a moment while we're talking about this, I want you to take a very good look at this stool, okay? And you can see the three sides to it, the three legs to it. And the significance of this was that each leg has a role to play, just like each side of the triangle has a role to play. Without one of them, if you took one of the legs away from this stool, you wouldn't be able to sit on it, or you'd have great difficulty on that, yes? Or conversely, if you took two, that would be even worse. So it's very much three sides to it, and they are all necessary, even though one doesn't place any more importance than the other. There is a specific order, and that's what we're going to cover here. Now, if you remember, in a previous lesson we spoke about Dr. Stephen Covey with, we're talking about the marketing psychology, and he said seek first to understand and then be understood. So really, we need to make sure that you understand your who, okay? And Dr. Covey even came out with a book called First Things First. So what I'm trying to explain here and underline is that the first place you start is with the who, the market. Who is the message going to? And while this can be a source of extreme stress for people sometimes, where they say, I don't know who to go after, or I don't know what to say, one of Drayton Bird's great sayings on creating marketing messages is, your marketing need not speak to everyone, but it must speak to someone. Okay, your marketing need not speak to everyone, but it must speak to someone. So therefore, just to summarize this, you need all three sides, but the market must come first, because that way you can seek to understand and then be understood by beginning to craft all your messages. So then, just addressing once again, choosing the right who. Okay, who is my market? How do I go about finding them? How do I go about choosing them? Well, there are two who things that you can consider. The first one is you can target your market, you can choose your market based on a niche or a niche, depending on how you like to pronounce that. And according to Wikipedia, okay, a niche market is the subset of the market on which a specific product is focused. And when we look here then, it says a niche market is a group of people with specific needs or interests. I see so many people getting overly confused and spending too much time on this, but the one really great thing to remember is niches are needs, okay? So when you begin to sort of say, okay, who's my market there? Identify needs, and that will do so much for you. Option 2, and this is something I really like and I think is rarely discussed when you talk about choosing that market. What we've got in front of us is a loyalty ladder, and it could just as well be called a sales loyalty ladder. Now, if you look at the very bottom, you have what is called a prospect. That is somebody who you think and you believe, and a lot of the time you have absolutely no doubt that what you provide would be good for them. However, that sort of relationship has not started as yet. Sometimes I like to even take it a bit earlier than that and have something called a suspect, somebody who's just sort of umming and ahhing and wondering. But let's say the prospect, for example, is somebody who's called in and requested a brochure, or they have signed up with their email, or they have filled out a coupon. All right, they have shown enough interest to know that yes, this is possible that it may happen. Then we move to a customer, somebody who has actually made a purchase as a one-off. A client is a repeat regular purchaser. Okay, a supporter, we could say someone tries new products, where you say, look, I'm sort of thinking of going in this direction now, could you try and see it? And then an advocate is someone who will tell their family and friends and other partners, and sometimes you see these ones who do joint ventures and affiliates and things like that, right? So that alone, if you were to put some messages together, do not make the mistake of using too broad a target audience. You have to break it down. Because imagine sending the same message to a prospect as you would an advocate. The prospect doesn't know you at all. The advocate knows you, believes you, trusts you, and is willing to work very closely with you. So don't make the mistake so many people make, taking too broad a target audience for your messages. Let me stress that again. So often I see people saying, well, I could be targeting this person and that person and this person and that person. And you know what? A lot of the time they are 100% correct. However, when it comes to marketing, we want to break it down. And as Drayton Bird said once again on creating these marketing messages, your marketing need not speak to everyone, but it must speak to someone. You've really got to get that in your mind, that it probably works to your detriment to think that what you have is for everybody. Pick that little group, pick that special someone, and then it'll be so much easier for you to move forward from there. In other words, leave the blind archery to others. So that is the first bit of the marketing triangle, where we spoke about the market or the who. Coming up next in lesson 7 is the message, also known as the what.